Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Mary Jane Laurie, and I'm an agricultural consultant with SAC Consulting, based in the Edinburgh office. Tonight's Farm Advisory Service meeting is called Choosing the Right Financial Software for Your Farming Business. So this idea came about, we get a lot of inquiries through our advisory work about what is the best software package for their farm. And I've had a few inquiries about people looking for a package that can do everything. So I started researching what is the best package. And the short answer is there isn't an overall package that might be a winning package, but there are different features that might make the package suitable for your business. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, the things that you need to think about when choosing the software and what you need to use it for. So there isn't an overall package that we're going to recommend, but we're going to go into a bit of detail about what they can all do and how that might be suitable for your business. So we've broken this series down into 3 webinars. Tonight is the first one. So tonight we're talking about financial software. We're also going to be talking about arable software at a later date, and then a final one on livestock software. So there are 3 in the series, and you can feel free to join any of the others if they're of interest to you as well. So tonight I'm joined by my colleagues Andrew Coalter and Becka Henderson. Andrew is from an accountancy background, and he's a consultant in the Perth office. And we're also joined by Becka, who's a farm business analyst, also with SAC Consulting. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Andrew.
Okay, thank you very much for attending, everybody. So my name is Andrew Coalter. I'm a senior consultant and area manager for SAC Consulting in Perth. As a chartered accountant, my role at SAC also includes responsibility for our bookkeeping service, but also for helping develop some of the business work of consultancy that SAC does across Scotland. So I've spent a number of years working in practice as an accountant, and this evening I'll be focusing on the requirements of financial record keeping and also looking at some of the different software options that are available. We're not going to go in detail on each of those packages this evening, but we'll look at what options are available and hopefully give you a bit of an overview of your choices in this area. If you do have any questions, please put them into the chat. In the interest of time, we've decided to save them to the end, but we will try and get to as many as we can. So I'm going to start here by thinking of financial record keeping in general for our farming businesses. So aside from the software, aside from the legal requirements and the VAT returns, why is financial record keeping important? So from my point of view, for a business to function effectively, you need to have a handle on your financial position. So this includes monitoring your cash balance and your reserves, along with tracking whether each enterprise on your farm is making or losing money for you year on year. So having a good system of financial record keeping also then provides you with information that you can use for management or business decision making and planning for the future. So if you understand your financial position, that will let you make decisions based on facts. And it's really an important part of business management, regardless of what industry that you're operating in. So this evening, I want to focus on a few key areas. So firstly, I'm going to look at what are the requirements for keeping records. Secondly, I'm going to talk about some of the benefits of digital accounting software and what they are. And then we'll actually look at some of the options available and give you a quick overview of some strengths and weaknesses for each. Ultimately, your utilization and your use of the software is as important as the software choice itself, but hopefully it should give you more of an informed opinion to help you decide which package might be right for you, either if you don't have one or if you're considering a change to perhaps a different package. So our starting point then needs to be considering what the legal obligation is on all businesses for keeping financial records. So this applies regardless of your business structure, whether that's an unincorporated sole trade or a partnership, or if you're an incorporated limited company. So the basic premise to be followed is that you should keep any records and documents that you received or that you've prepared that you'll use to complete entries in your self-assessment or company tax return. Additionally, for those of us who prepare VAT returns, which catches most agricultural businesses, records need to be retained for this purpose as well. HMRC may check your records to make sure you're paying the right amount of tax, and that's where the checks can come into place. So in terms of how long you need to retain your records for, this is something I get asked quite often. So if you're self-employed, so you're either operating your farming business as a sole trade or in a partnership, you must keep your records for at least 5 years after the 31st of January submission deadline of the relevant tax year. So for example, if you file your 21-22 tax return by the 31st of January 23, you would need to retain those records until the 31st of January 2028. If you were to have any kind of investigation, HMRC may check your records effectively to make sure you're paying the right amount of tax. You will sometimes need to refer to records that are already several years old, perhaps older than that. So for example, if you're disposing of an asset that you've owned for a long time, such as land or shares, you may need to have older records to calculate a capital gain or loss in these scenarios. So for limited companies, it's the same premise really. The records for an accounting period will normally have to be kept for 6 years from the end of that period. So for example, if your last company accounting period ended on the 31st of December 2022, the records would have to be kept until 31st of December 2028. For VAT returns, we're effectively keeping the same records for the same time frame, but it's just to make a note of that in the slides that we need to retain them for this purposes. Finally, if you've got any late income tax returns, if they're submitted 4 years or more after the deadline, you need to retain those records for at least 15 months after you submit that return. So let's briefly touch on what records we actually need to keep. So you should keep any records and documents that you've received or that you've prepared that will influence your tax return effectively. So that's all of your sales, all of your income. An important point to note there is that includes grant income. That would include things like self-employed income support scheme through COVID, as well as our usual suspects like basic payment scheme, LFAS, beef calf scheme claims, etc. We need a record of all business expenses as well. Obviously, all your VAT records go with that. And if you're an employer, it's a case of keeping your PAYE records as well. In terms of storing records, the traditional format of storing these has generally been a paper copy in a folder or a few folders, in a physical format. Everything there from, invoices to bank statements to contracts. We also have the option to store records in a digital format, which is one of the benefits we're obviously discussing this evening in terms of digital financial software. You can actually keep most records digitally, whether that's just saved on a computer or within your accounting software itself. If you're doing this, you may not need to keep the original paper records as long as the method that you use captures all of the information on the documents, and it allows you to present the information to HMRC if they request it in a readable format. So using digital or online software, you've got the option there of storing it in that format. You don't have to store all your invoices in this way, but we do have the option there, which a lot of people do avail of. So I want to touch briefly on VAT. Agriculture differs from other businesses in a lot of ways, but one of which is really our relationship with bookkeeping and VAT. So for most businesses who charge 20% VAT on their outputs, it means at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, they need to repay VAT to HMRC that they've effectively been collecting on their behalf. So effectively, the VAT they've charged customers is greater than the VAT that they have paid on their own purchases. So they have to repay quarterly or monthly. So farming differs here. as agricultural outputs normally do have VAT charged, but at 0% or zero rated. So that means that within a VAT return, farmers get to claim back the input VAT on expenses, but we don't actually have any output VAT to repay. So therefore, we're normally in a refund or a reclaim position. What that means is that it's generally beneficial for farms to be VAT registered at any size compared to other businesses who might want to be holding off until they're above the mandatory registration threshold. If you're unsure of any of the typical VAT rates within agriculture, the Farm Advisory Service has actually produced a number of really helpful resources on this topic, including quite a good fact sheet that outlines the main requirements and the main VAT rates associated with farming. So yeah, this means that almost all farming businesses are VAT registered regardless of size. And because of this, we have to get our bookkeeping up to date in line with that VAT period, whether that's monthly or quarterly. I have put a note on the screen of the registration threshold, but you can choose to register for VAT at any time, even if you're less than the threshold of £80,000 of turnover within a 12-month period. Particularly for new businesses, setting up a business bank account and registering for VAT can quite often be an afterthought. So if that's something that you haven't done yet, you should take some advice on that and make sure that it's set up in the right way. The last point, which you can't really avoid when speaking about VAT, is the push that we've all had towards online accounting software that you'll be aware of, and that's making tax digital for VAT, particularly for smaller farms who weren't doing this already. This means that all VAT registered businesses now need to submit VAT returns digitally to HMRC, generally using an approved accounting software. So since we need to comply with this digital requirement, let's have a quick look at what some of those benefits can be for our farming businesses. There are lots of good accounting software choices out there. We'll touch on those later. And a lot of those offer similar functionality, but perhaps slightly differing in their formats that they presented in. The most important piece to pick up on here is what the common benefits are of using a digital accounting software packages. So using digital software can speed up your processes effectively by taking information directly from your bank and with the ability to automate reconciliation of standard recurring items. The bookkeeping process is generally quicker, easier, and less reliant on paper records that you have. In my experience, that makes a VAT return process easier, which in reality is most people's touch point with their accounting information on their farm. Another key benefit is that using digital accounting software packages gives you access to good information about how your business is performing. This removes that, that historic need that we've always had to rely on our accountants to give you a detailed breakdown of your business performance, as the reports within your own accounting system that you have access to can provide a lot of what you need. It also provides better oversight of financial performance. So the people who have a tendency towards being more organized and generally put more time into their financial records tend to succeed. It's all well and good growing record yields or keeping more cows than you did the year before, but you need to know what your costs are, and keeping your accounting and bookkeeping up to date means that you'll be able to easily see what your costs are, and it will also help facilitate conversations with your accountants or your bank managers at any point that you need to do so. Using digital accounting systems is just a good way to keep on top of these matters, as your information is generally well presented, providing you put in the time to use that system appropriately. So how do we start thinking about choosing the right software for your business? So there's plenty of different options available. We're going to touch on some of the main options out there in the market at the moment at different price points. Just a few things I thought I'd highlight as points to consider. Cost is obviously a big one for a lot of people. We don't want to be paying excessively for something if we're not making the most of it, or we want to make sure that we're getting, an appropriate deal on it. Some banks do offer free software, but it's bearing in mind that that might not necessarily be the best piece of software for your business. Just because something's free doesn't mean that it won't cost you in terms of hassle that it gives you down the line. So don't let the outright cost be a direct barrier to what you use. Make sure it's appropriate for the business that you have and for the farming enterprises that you have. Features is a big thing to consider. A lot of the programs now are web-based applications, but it might be the case that you would prefer a desktop-based piece of software. These options are available, and there will be something that will suit you and your business. Other features you might want to think about include budgeting or forecasting functionality, or functionality within there for custom reports, depending on the level of interaction you want to have with your accounting software and how much you want to get out of it. I've put in that point as somebody who worked as an accountant in practice for a number of years, just something to think about. Compatibility with your accountant is not necessarily a big concern, particularly with the main software providers, but do keep in touch with your accountant and let them know what you're going to use. They can perhaps steer you to things that they believe are more suited to your system, as they'll have experience of lots of different areas. Another quick point, just when I think about it, is that your accountant or your bookkeeper might be able to get you a license at a discounted rate if they partner with some of the software providers. So it's always worth asking the question to see if you can get a better deal on whatever it is you're trying, whatever piece of software you're trying to go for. A lot of the financial software options come with a lot of add-ons. So the majority of account software options that we'll look at aren't agricultural specific, but are really good accounting systems. But they may offer options to add on additional apps or software, whether that's for things like stock management, scanning invoices directly into the system, or financial forecasting. So it's trying to think what requirements you want of your system and then looking at what the options are that are available for you. So one of the main contenders when considering accounting software is Xero. So Xero is a web-based package that is focused on small and medium-sized businesses. So in business terms, small and medium-sized businesses captures almost all farming enterprises in Scotland, regardless of how big the farm is. So it's generally appropriate in most scenarios. So Xero has been in the UK for quite some time, but in recent years, it's effectively now considered the incumbent in the marketplace for small businesses and holds the largest market share. It is quite a popular choice at the moment, and it's a program that, while not agricultural specific, is quite user-friendly and it's quite an adaptable program. I put a bit of information on the screen, and I'm doing this for each as I go through to talk about the prices that you might expect to pay for it. There's a basic starter package at £15 per month, and there's a standard package, which a lot of people will use and tends to be the norm at £30 a month. The basic package has a limit on how many transactions of certain types can be done each month. The standard package removes that limitation and suits the remainder of businesses, the majority of businesses. It comes with a mobile app as well, which allows you to undertake tasks or take a snap of your invoices on the go or wherever you are. Most applications mentioned here in this presentation will be regularly used by accountants, but Xero is one of the ones that's probably the most common to use for agricultural accounts. However, as I said, whenever we're going through this and you're coming up to with your own decisions, make sure you speak to your own accountant and business advisors to see what system suits them as well. As I said, Xero is quite a popular choice at the moment in the marketplace. It is quite widely used. It's quite a comprehensive package. So for those who are interested in getting deeper into their numbers, Xero has a lot of functionality to allow for drilling into the data and generating useful custom reports to suit your business or reporting requirements that you want, and through a fairly logical user interface. It has lots of add-on apps. So there's apps that come along with it, which give you things like the ability to scan invoices. An example of that would be HubDoc, which actually comes for free with your subscription. There's other apps which are available to manage, stock and inventory, if that's what you need. The main agricultural specific app, which we will touch on, is Figured. So we'll come on to that shortly. All programs have their pros and cons. As I've said, it's not an agricultural specific program. However, it is quite a powerful tool that you can customize to suit your own agricultural reporting requirements. The final point just to make on Zero is that while it does have a good range of reports, it doesn't actually include day-to-day forecasting for the business within the program, although you can get add-ons available for that. So with this in mind, when talking about agricultural financial record keeping, it would be an oversight not to mention Figured. So Figured is a planning and farm budgeting tool, which uses the data that you already have within Zero to enable agricultural specific forecasting based on the operations that you have on your farm. It's not a record keeping software itself, but it piggybacks off what you've already put into Zero and works from there. So it's a powerful cash flow forecasting and budgeting tool straight out of the box, which goes further and allows for things like livestock and crop reconciliations within your forecasting while using that real-time accounting data from Zero, so that as the year progresses, it's really easy to monitor, your actual position versus your budgeted position as you go through. There is a cost to using Figured. It's £30 per month. That would be on top of paying for Zero. But again, if you're getting a subscription through your accountant or your bookkeeper provider, speak to them and see if they can get any discounts on that as well. So second in the marketplace in terms of number of users is QuickBooks. So this is another web-based program that can link directly to things like your bank feeds to speed up reconciliations and VAT returns. So it's quite widely known for having an easy-to-use interface and presents a lot of the key information quite clearly. There are, again, as with all these options, there are a variety of price points, but for most people, I would expect the Essentials package will be what you should go for to meet the needs of your farming business. That leaves it at quite a similar price point to Zero, and actually quite a lot of the other packages we'll consider for most users. QuickBooks is another application that, it's noted for just clearly displaying information. And we do have a screenshot of one of the home pages on the screen here. And it might be the case that the level of reporting ability in Zero isn't necessarily needed. So something like QuickBooks might just simplify that a bit. Again, it's not an agricultural specific program, but it does have the ability to set up categories and account names to match how your farming business operates in the same way that you can do with a lot of these pieces of software. One point to note here is the limitation in the number of users. So if you did go for the basic plan, you're limited to 1 user, with the regular Essentials plan limited to 3 users. So just something to be aware of. Another package we need to consider is Sage accounting software. So Sage account software is absolutely nothing new to the market, and it has a long history of users on its desktop-based application, and I've no doubt that will include some people on this call. The move has now been made to Sage Cloud Accounting, which is a web-based version with a refreshed operating system. So Sage itself still holds, a strong share of the marketplace in terms of the number of users. So again, just to give you an idea of prices for this sort of software, there's a starter, which is a more limited program at £14 per month plus VAT, whereas the standard users, it'll come in at a cost of £28 per month plus the VAT on top of that as well. Again, as with all the previous softwares that we've discussed so far, it's a web-based program, but there is a mobile app available for scanning invoices, and you can do bank reconciliations within there, and you can see a lot of your key reports on the go. So it's quite flexible in terms of the availability of information for you. The functionality of Sage Online is quite similar to competitors, but it may suit users who've used Sage in the past and are familiar with how their support team works, if nothing else. One advantage here is that payroll is included within the price if you're completing payroll for staff, rather than an add-on costing an extra few pounds a month as it would be in the previous systems. Another quick point is actually that there's a level of forecasting functionality within the software itself without having to consider the need for add-ons on top of that. So Landmark Key Prime is it's the first agricultural specific piece of software that we're considering this evening. So Landmark have developed a range of software options that cover everything from accounts packages such as Key Prime to crops and livestock recording, property management, and general estate management, I suppose. So I've been told the following prices I have on the screen, which I believe are based on the accounts package, but this is a piece of software which would be worth investigating directly with the company if it's one that you wanted to consider for farm or estate management, given that the software has quite a few moving parts beyond just the functionality of bookkeeping and accounting. It definitely goes beyond that. So a few things to note about this piece of software. The main difference is that Key Prime is an agricultural specific piece of software, and as such it comes with standard reports for gross margins and cash flows, etc., without the need for setting up any custom reports in other software. It is available as a desktop-based app as well. However, there can be an expensive initial cost to it, but I believe you do get quite a well-supported system within that, so something to bear in mind. In the interest of time, I just thought I would summarize another couple of software options that are available here. Free Agent is quite a common accounting software at the moment. It's a slightly more simple system, but actually it suits a lot of people just fine. If you bank with RBS or NatWest or anyone in the NatWest group, it's actually free for those customers. So obviously in Scotland, that's RBS customers primarily. So you can get, if you have a business bank account with them, you'll get access to that software for free. It is slightly more limited than some of the other pieces of software that I've mentioned already, but it's a perfectly usable system for bookkeeping and VAT returns, depending on what level of reporting and information you need out of your system. FarmPlan is another piece of software to talk about. So FarmPlan is one of the old favorites in the agricultural world, particularly the older desktop-based version. And that relates to the agricultural add-ons that come with it and the agricultural reporting as part of it as a specific piece of software for the industry. It does integrate with cropping and livestock reporting and now works as a web-based tool. And I have also heard that it's reported to be integrating with HerdWatch in the future. So if HerdWatch is something you use for your cattle management, then that's potentially a consideration as well in terms of tying those systems together. So I've included a few other facts in the table above, which may be useful. So one I do get asked about quite often is if there's a free trial, and in many cases there is for a lot of these pieces of software, as you're able to see. And generally you're looking at a monthly rolling subscription. So it does mean that you're not tied down to a supplier, and it is possible to move platforms. If you're using a platform but want to move away to perhaps one of the ones listed on the screen, get in touch with your advisors to see how that could benefit your business. It is possible to do. But what I would say is, rather than relying on free trial, have a read around yourself first. And, again, speak to your accountant, speak to your business advisors or your consultants. No product is going to be perfect, but effectively any of these will provide you with a good system if you invest some time in their setup and their use. So as a bit of a summary point then, hopefully this has demonstrated some of the key software options that are available. I believe that many of you will already be using one of these options, but it should give you a flavor of what else is available and what key software providers you should consider for farm financial record keeping. There's no right answer, and often it comes down to personal preference and the setup of your own business. However, it may also come down to what the preference of your accountant is or anyone else that you're working with. Another advantage to note is that the better you keep your ongoing digital records, the less time your accountant will need to spend at year-end tidying things up, which in theory should result in a reduced fee, but they'll not like that I've said that. Which brings me on to my first point in the slide here, really, which is regardless of what system you use, make sure you actually use it. If you're required to pay for the software, get your value out of it by using that tool to enhance your decision making. Finally, don't overcomplicate it. I do appreciate that that might sound counterproductive, and I am showing you some of the features of these tools and outlining, the more detail you add, the better reporting you can get out. But my word of caution is just to be sensible with it. You can make any of these systems as complicated as you want, but the more complexity you add, the more time it will take for you to keep it updated on a monthly or on a quarterly basis. I fully believe that farmers should be making better use of their financial data, without a doubt, but it's the same as any other aspect of your business. If you're not going to use it, don't bury your time into it. Ultimately, good quality bookkeeping is important for compliance reasons, but it can also benefit your own business and leave you better informed. So regardless of your software, you need to be able to understand which part of your business is making money to succeed. So use these tools to your advantage. Use them to drill down into, the gross margins of each of your enterprises and really utilize them to understand your business better, rather than it just being a chore for compliance purposes. So if anyone has any questions on these, as a starting point, my details are on the screen. In the interest of time, we're going to keep questions to the end. So I'd appreciate if you drop any queries you have into the chat box and we'll pick them up then. You're welcome to get in touch with myself at any stage if you're needing advice on things like this. But now I'm going to pass on to Becka Henderson. So Becka is an analyst within the Farm Business Survey team. She works closely with a lot of farmers and spends her time analysing financial information from a range of these software systems. So she's very well placed to bring us some of the benefits that we can obtain from proactively using these systems, rather than just focusing on the compliance. So I'll stop sharing my slides and pass over to Becka. Thanks very much.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming along tonight. I'm Becka. I have been with the Scottish Farm Business Survey team for around 2 years now. We are in the very privileged position where over 400 farms trust us to audit through their accounts. We see a very wide selection of the software that we've been discussing tonight, as we deal with a very wide cross-section of the farming community. Therefore, they're employing a wide range of accounting firms and they're comprising of various different farming types. These can be two of the major factors which can influence the choice in your software. All accountants will work with a variety of packages, but there are some that they would class as their first choice. They will be partnered with and they can often provide a better deal and would have a preferred package. So within the survey, I had a quick look around. Our majority leader, as Andrew has already mentioned, would be Xero, probably followed by Sage and then Farm Plan. There's around another 8 packages that we have experienced within the team. None of them are perfect. They all have good points, better points. None of them will have all the features that I am going to mention. So I focused on highlighting the key benefits associated with digital accounting. So it's a case of just finding what features are most key to your business and what will be the best fit for you. How digital records can benefit your business. Having your records on hand all the time via apps or cloud-hosted software means that when you really need your data, it's there. If you're trying to work out how much fertilizer is costing, how much your last load of feed was, what you're spending to date in each area is, what you spent in previous years, it's in your hand. If you've got your phone, you've got this data. You're not trying to guess at it, it's there. One of the other benefits of having an app or a cloud hosted is you don't have to do a manual update to any of this. The updates are automatically rolled out by the software provider. If you are a business that's providing services off farm, you can create an invoice as you complete the job, which you can either email if the job's completed now, or you can create as a draft to be added to throughout the month. Say if you are contracting from somebody, you're ploughing, you're seeding, you're rolling a field, you can add all that, send it through at the end of the month. You can also itemize any inputs you've provided, such as fertilizer, seed, and hopefully by doing this, as you leave, just before you leave the field, you're not going to end up with a big workload at the end of every month, or in some cases, as we see, end of every year. So I'd hope by putting the transaction in as you're finishing, leaving the holding, you would stop this dreaded once a year sit down trying to piece it all together. These invoices can be created in less than a minute and allows you to note down accurate areas, numbers, quantities while they're still fresh in your mind, ensuring that you are billing for all the work you're doing. You're not trying to remember what piece of paper you wrote this down on, how many bales there were. This would help to improve your cash flow. And also, once you've created the invoices, the software will keep track of anything that is outstanding. So if you are not receiving your payments in a timely manner, your software will be bringing this to your attention. On the other side, with money going out, you can accurately record expenditure as it occurs. A lot of the packages now have what we would call an auto entry system, where the software can identify key elements in your purchase invoices, and it will start populating the entry. If you take a photo or a scan on your phone of an invoice, say you've been filling up with diesel, you can then forward that to the software, which will hold a digital copy of your transaction. So no more receipts going through the washing machine, being sat on by the dog in the pickup, had some batch codes or something scribbled on it. And if it's a case that your partner's doing your books, this might be saving you more than time. This might be creating a better atmosphere around the kitchen table. And also, as suppliers and customers push to increase the volume of their admin that's being done by email, all the correspondence can be forwarded to your software package and then attached to the matching entry, reducing the amount of actual physical paper in your office, saving you money. You're not printing it off. Also, come year end, you're not needing to take your folders along to the accountants. They are able to look at the invoices digitally. And as Andrew had mentioned earlier, should you have an investigation with HMRC, those records will already be there, reducing hopefully the time that would be involved in these kind of scenarios. Different packages allow different numbers of users, as discussed by Andrew. The number of people involved in your business maybe will determine which package is the best fit for you, how many people you want accessing your accounting software. So one of the benefits, or one of the key benefits, is rather than you passing on information third hand to your consultants, accountants, agronomists, you can set up different levels of access to your accounts. Some people will be able to have it as a read-only. They can't amend or change anything, but they can see the information there. They can view it directly, make more informed judgments. And in the case of your accountant, if you're unsure of what you're doing, if there's an unusual transaction and you're not quite sure how to deal with it, they're able to view exactly what you're viewing, talk you through it, help you out, and not hopefully having to redo things, and making sure that mistakes or any errors are kept to a minimum. And with having everything on your phone, hopefully you'd have to spend less time, everything on your phone. Having everything portable means that if you end up stuck somewhere, you are able to jump onto your accounts. If you've got a spare half hour, you're maybe able to sit there and reconcile off some transactions, attach some invoices. You are able to make better use of your time. And being able to connect to a bank feed, a lot of the software packages will allow you to connect to more than one bank account if you're using reserve accounts, Euro accounts. So you can make sure that you're not missing anything coming in or coming out, reducing the human error of uploading things manually. This will reduce your workload and mean that you're not waiting traditionally till month end to get statements. For reporting budgets and stock, within a farm there could be 4, 5, 10, 20 different areas that you want to look at. You want to see how your sheep are doing, your cattle are doing. You're a big arable place, you want to look at your oilseed rape, your wheat, your barley, all in isolation. You can set up tracking categories that will look at your direct inputs to each one. You can assign your veterinary costs to cattle, you can assign your sheep veterinary costs to sheep. You are able to look at how each enterprise is doing. So if you've got various sectors within your business, they can be tracking options can be tailored to suit each business. If you've got diversification, so these functions will allocate the income and expenditure to a tracking type, and also you can set bank rules which would code a percentage of inputs such as electricity or insurance, which repeat every month, every quarter, and you could assign a percentage to each one of the enterprises, therefore getting a more realistic picture of how your business is doing. You can create budgets and set up tracking on them. You can set a budget for as many categories as you would like, add it to your home screen so you can see it at a glance when you log on. Budgets can be adapted to a level that suits your needs, whether you want to know by the end of the year if you've spent more than £100,000 on tractor repairs, or if you want to look at it on a level if your electricity usage is increasing by more than a certain percentage each month, and everything in between. So it can really be adapted to suit the requirements of your business. There are a lot of reporting functions, as Andrew touched on earlier. It can be quite complex. Sometimes the volume of reports can be quite mind-blowing, but a lot of the packages have the same reporting functions, say profit and loss, account transactions, trial balance, which will allow you to gain an insight into how the figures are looking before year end. Again, you can discuss with your financial advisors while all viewing the same information to ensure that you're all reading from the same page, and they're able to provide more timely information to regards to any planning that you might want to put in place before year end. A lot of the benefits that can be gained from utilising a digital software package are dependent on how much the user is prepared to participate with the package. If you want to just do your VAT, then you're unlikely to be able to utilise the resources to their best. However, if the inputs are sufficient that allow more detailed records to be kept, then stock levels and usage can be documented, minimum levels can be set so that reordering can be not fully automated, but you can keep track of what's going on. Again, you can keep track of quantities, values across your farming enterprises. As Andrew pointed out, there are packages available for more in-depth recording. There's specialist livestock agronomy, which has been developed to sync the financial side of the business to an agri-specific package. So Xero, Sage, QuickBooks, they're all used by millions of users in countless different industries. So while they're adaptable and compliant in an HMRC reporting capacity, they don't perform the specialist tasks that we might want, like bringing in births, costing out individual fields, but add-ons like Geofolia, Figured, will sync with your financial data and allow you to appropriate the costings to the field or calving pen that's utilising those inputs. The next stage that we can take the financial data to with the survey, you've gathered all this data, you've put the effort into it. There's a voluntary scheme that is run by SAC on behalf of Scottish Government. It's free to join, it's voluntary, it's fully confidential, and you will from there receive your farm business report, which is a detailed set of management accounts. You will get your whole farm benchmarking, so you can see how your farm is performing against other farms of similar scale around the country. And also you get a carbon audit. That's one of the big benefits of the digital software, that if the data being held in the invoices is there, carbon audits can be achieved with virtually no input from the farmer. The data is all there. We are able to audit it. We're able to extract it. And as carbon recording becomes more and more prevalent, then I feel that this is a really big advantage to digital accounts. So if you want any further information, there's a web link there that will take you to the Farm Business Survey page. And it will just allow you, you've gathered all this data, presented it, you want to be able to get the most out of it. So we are more than happy to take on any farm and work alongside you. And these are the outputs that we are providing. This is just a snapshot of a benchmarking report. This is the kind of data that we are able to feed back to you. And your data does make a difference. It identifies the areas of agriculture where support is needed. It highlights any fluctuations that are occurring within that crop year, and it helps create an accurate picture of Scottish farming for the Scottish Government, and just provides a snapshot of how it really is. So if there is any questions, I also don't just do this for the Farm Business Survey. I am a first-hand, sometimes frustrated farmer's wife who does the books for her own farm. So I definitely have the first-hand experience of using one of these packages.
Thank you very much, Becca. We've had a few questions come in while we've been talking there. So the first one came in on the Q&A box. Does Figured work with QuickBooks? That's probably a question for you, Becca.
Not as far as I'm aware. Figured was developed by Xero, and it's a specific bolt-on for Xero. I don't know if QuickBooks have anything similar in the pipeline or not, but no, Figured is not a sister, but is developed by the same designers of Xero.
No, you're right. It's a system that works with Xero. I believe it might work with QuickBooks over in USA, but not in the UK. As far as I'm aware, it's just with Xero is our only option.
Okay, the next question we've had come in, which I think everybody can see in the chat there, which software is cash accounting and which uses double entry?
So I think the difference you might be trying to get at there is, whether the pieces of software can accommodate cash accounting versus accrual accounting. So that's accounting for transactions as the cash hits your bank rather than the date of the transaction itself. Any of these systems should be fine for that. When you're setting up the software for the first time, it's just an option within the financial settings, sort of in the same area that you would put in details about your VAT registration and when your VAT quarters are and when your year end is. It's all part of that setup process. If it's something you're wanting any advice with, speak to your accountant, speak to a bookkeeper. They'll be happy to help you with that. But in terms of the software we've mentioned this evening, they'll all be able to handle that.
Change the reporting functions on some so that you can look at it on both, but rather than, it would be submitting it. I think you would stick to one, but I think some of them have the facility to give you a reporting function based on one or the other.
Okay, we've also got, it's more of a comment than a question, and this is something that I've thought about. I should have said at the start of the webinar as well that I'm in the process of developing a publication that will come out to accompany these series of webinars, and it's basically going to be a document that summarises the various pros and cons of the packages, the cost and that sort of thing. But one thing I was thinking about when I was writing that is Wi-Fi can obviously be an issue for a lot of us in rural areas. As I said at the start, I'm just outside Edinburgh, but often have issues with my internet as tonight. I don't know if you can actually see me. I've put my camera on, but on my screen it's still black.
No,
Can you
don't
see
see
me?
anything.
No.
Nope.
So that proves the point. My Wi-Fi is not great. My camera is on for some reason. It's deciding not to show my face. So there is that issue that if you're using maybe an app on your phone and you're, as Becca said, maybe you're out in the field and you want to record something that perhaps if you don't have 4G, it might not work. From a practical point of view, Becca, do you know if there's some of the ones that you might be using out cloud-based, can you work offline and then upload stuff?
Yeah.
Do you know? You
Yes,
can.
you can.
So there is the option if Wi-Fi isn't great that you can work away and then upload. Okay.
You can get in, you create your invoices. You just, you wouldn't be able to maybe email them on to the recipient, but yes, you can work offline.
Okay, that's great.
And then hopefully, if you don't get great signal, if at home, because it is cloud-based, if you know that there's somewhere that is you're able to work, rather than being stuck to one location, you are able to then hopefully take your iPad or your laptop with you.
I see Don has put a question in the chat there. It should be the case that everyone on the webinar can see that question and answer it. I'm also in a farming business at home and we have Farm Plan and we are reluctantly thinking about switching to the cloud-based system. So I can report back on how that goes once we start. I'm envisaging it should be relatively straightforward. They'll have done a lot of work developing it, but it's also maybe a time that we're thinking about changing our software, which brings me on to a bit of a question of my own, Andrew and Becca. How easy is it to switch to a different software package? Andrew, from an accounting point of view, are you better waiting to year end or can you do it anytime really?
No, it doesn't need to be at a year end necessarily. I think the cleanest point would be at your year end for obvious reasons, because you can tidy up in one accounting system and then move over to the next. It's just trying to find a definitive point. So the normal points would either be at year end or at the end of a VAT return, quarterly or monthly or whatever that is, just making sure that you've got a clear date at which you switch from one system into the other. There's no reason why you can't run the two systems side by side for a month or two. And quite often that's something I will suggest to people. Just while they get comfortable with a new system, keep using your old one for a month or two. You don't need to actually file VAT returns through it. But as long as you've got a complete set of records for each financial year for your account to use and there's no gaps in there, there's no hard and fast on when you have to move. But generally speaking, your year-end date's a pretty sensible time if you're trying to make a change like that.
If there's no further questions, I'm just going to launch a quick poll. Hopefully this will work because of my internet. This is a Farm Advisory Service funded webinar tonight. So it's great if we can get feedback on how you felt the webinar went. You'll also be sent a quick survey. We'd be really grateful if you could fill that in as well. But meantime, if you would like to vote in the poll, that would be great. Just gives us a bit of feedback on how you feel the webinar was tonight. As Andrew said in his presentation there as well, feel free to get in touch with any of us if you've got any specific questions, and we'll be doing the other 2 webinars later in October and November about livestock record keeping and arable record keeping as well. So please do feel free to join us for those. But otherwise, thank you very much, Becca and Andrew, for your time tonight, and thank you everyone for joining us.